Weather in North Dallas can be a little interesting. Maybe I can go as far as to say a little schizophrenic. So, as of the recording of this video, it is now early March, and early March is the beginning of severe weather season. So, if you're moving to DFW or currently live here, or thinking about moving here, hopefully this information will be helpful to you weather-wise. Because I know when I moved here, one of the concerns I had was tornadoes and what that meant. Because being from Southern California, not used to having much weather other than 7 degrees and sunny, right? So, I wanted to kind of get a sense of what is it like, what am I in for when it comes to weather. So I want to kind of dive into this a little bit, give you a little bit of insight on what to prepare for as we're getting ready to get into the severe weather season, so you know what to prep for if you decide to move to DFW. So one thing to know is that storms can happen at any time. What I'm going to talk about right now is just when are the majority of the storms in the area, just so you can kind of be prepared. So basically, for Central and North Texas, 50% of the storms happen between March and May. Again, that's not to say that you are not going to experience any storms outside of those months, but that's when the majority of the storms would be taking place. And so for that reason, it's really important to stay weather aware. This is a term I had never heard of before. Like, what is weather aware? All the weather look the same in Southern California for the most part. It might be gloomy, May grays, June gloom, that kind of thing. Outside of that, there really wasn't any reason to pay attention to the weather. But moving here, I realized, oh no, you need to pay attention to the weather because it could look one way in the morning, be very different in the afternoon, and a whole other weather system come in the evening. So really important to stay like what they call weather aware. So you do actually need to kind of check the weather and understand what's supposed to be on tap for that day. But just so you know, so I'll call that severe weather season is typically right now. So right now, as recording on this video, it's early March 2024. So we're about to head into that severe weather season all the way through till May. There could be another little bit of an uptick as we get into the latter half of summer. But for the most part, those are the months that you can kind of anticipate that we're gonna have some more severe weather. So now it's about like, okay, what do you do? How do you properly prepare if you're not used to being in an area like I was that has severe weather? Okay, let me go back and say the severe weather season, like, yeah, it can happen at any time. But technically, let me take that back. There are two seasons. So the first is what we're about to enter, so the spring. So let's call it March through June, actually. I think I said May earlier. So let's call it March through June. And so they have something called a popcorn convection, where as we get later into the summer months, we can get like a crazy, it could be nice all day, and then we'll get a crazy storm in the afternoon, and it goes away, and it's though it never happened. So that's kind of why it's also really important to stay weather aware in this area, because from the morning to the afternoon to the evening, things can change very dramatically. So you just want to know, before you head out for the day, you just want to know what's at least anticipated. It doesn't always shake out the way that the weather man says, right? But you just want to know what's anticipated so that you don't get caught in the storm unaware or caught in severe weather and are not prepared for it. So just know, so that's the first one. So in the spring, and then like I said, towards the later half of the summertime, we can get these popcorn, they call it popcorn convection, I think is the technical term. But essentially that's when the weather, we can get like an afternoon storm that kind of comes out. It seems like it comes out of nowhere, where it'll be nice during the day, no problem, you're out and about. And then all of a sudden the storm hits, and maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 2 hours, and then it's gone. And like I said, and the sun's back as though it never happened. So just know that springtime towards the late summer, that's kind of the first phase. Second phase is going to be in the fall. So in the fall, let's call it from October through December. That's the second peak, because as the season starts to change, so we come out of the summer months where it be warmer to cooler weather starting to come in for the fall. I think actually this past December, we saw about 14 different tornado warnings just in December. So just know that that would be that secondary season. So anytime there's big swings from going to either cool to warm or warm to cool, those seasons tend to be the season where we're going to see the most severe weather. For the most part, I've met a number of people who have lived here in the North Texas area all of their life and have never seen a tornado. So don't let what I'm sharing with you freak you out or dissuade you from moving to the area. Like I said, I'm originally from Southern California, don't know anything about tornadoes, know lots about earthquakes, know nothing about tornadoes. And so that was the real concern. Like, I don't know what to do in a tornado. And most folks in this area, they don't have storm shelters. There's a few that do, but I would say the majority of homes, I should say, don't have storm shelters. And so that's, again, because the ground is it's not ideal for digging deep into the ground. So I think, and it's really costly to do that. Not to say you can do it. It's very costly to do it just because the ground's so hard. And so most folks don't have it, but what they do have is they might have like a storm room, or they have a room in their house that they go to. So here in our house, we have a space underneath our stairs that we would use to go and if we needed to take shelter from a storm. Since we've been here over the last 4 years, I think I felt the need to go in there once. And that's because it wasn't even a tornado warning. It was technically something called straight line winds. Straight line winds are basically like a hurricane, but instead of the wind going in a circle, it's going in, as it sounds, a straight line. So what's dangerous about that is that it covers more ground, because it's not just in a centralized area. It can cover miles and miles and miles. And so that was the first and only time that I felt like, okay, we need to get into the closet, because those winds were crazy. Like our windows, we have a fairly new house, and our windows were like shaking. And that's when I was like, okay, this is too much for me. So we went and got in the closet for that. And we weren't there long. Like I want to say maybe it was 30, 40 minutes. That's why it's also really important to have like a battery operated radio, so you can hear what's going on and things like that. But honestly, that was the only time that I felt whether it was a tornado warning or a tornado threat, because those two things are two different things. Tornado warning means that pretty much the conditions for a tornado are favorable. So when the conditions are favorable, that's a tornado watch, meaning they haven't seen any circular patterns or anything like that, but the weather conditions are such that a tornado could develop from that. A tornado warning is they may have actually seen some circular patterns, and so there's a specific area that typically they'll show you the specific area where there's a warning in this area, meaning because they'll have storm chasers that go. I used to watch the show all the time. From storm chasers that go out, and that their job is to see like, okay, where are the conditions favorable, and try to see if they can have eyes. Really, they're the eyes on the ground to see, do you start to see some circulation happening? And so that way the forks in that area can be warned. So tornado warning is much more threatening than a tornado watch. We'll get a lot during those peak seasons that I just talked about. We'll get a lot of watches happening, in which case you just, again, need to be weather aware. So before you leave the house, if you're under a tornado watch, probably actually want to stay close to the house just in case it does turn into a warning. If they start seeing circular patterns and things like that, you just want to be close. What's great from what I have seen is that they're really good at really pinpointing the areas, the specific areas. So they'll be like, oh, you're in Prosper off of 380 or what have you. It'll really identify where it is. So that way you can take the proper precautions. So of course you want to have an emergency kit. You want to be able to identify that area in your house that you can go to in the event that you do need to take shelter. And so those are generally, like if you have stairs, a lot of times underneath the stairs, or essentially an interior room that does not have windows. Because the concern is not so much a Wizard of Oz situation where your house is going to get picked up and taken and put somewhere else. It's more about if there's hail or anything like that, if windows or things like that break, that's the concern. Or debris, if God forbid windows break, debris start flying. Again, that's not about your house getting picked up. It's the debris and possible breaking of any windows and things like that is really what you're primarily taking shelter from. It's rare that there's going to be a concern that the tornado is going to come straight, at least in this area, going to come straight through your house. And we're talking about complete demolition of the property. It's more of the flying hazard. So that's just something to know, because that was something that I was concerned about around, oh my God, the house is going to get picked up. It's not something that couldn't happen. It's highly unlikely. It's more about the debris and things flying. And that's what you're taking shelter from. One of the other things I was concerned about in moving to North Texas is like, are we in Tornado Alley? Is this part of like, should we routinely be prepared during those peak seasons for tornadoes? And so technically, yes, parts of North Texas are in tornado alleys. That just means that it's a portion of the state that gets more frequent with tornadoes. Not the same though as like our neighbors just to the north of us, Oklahoma. Oklahoma definitely gets more activity than I would say that we do. We get a lot of I would say watches, but not so much threats, meaning, conditions might be favorable, but they haven't seen anything. And a lot of times it turns into nothing. And what I would also say, what was surprising to me is these storms, a lot of times they move very quickly. So you might be under a tornado watch for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and it's gone. It's off to the next city, or it's making its way going east. So it's not like you're under watch for hours and hours. It's usually, well, I take it back. There are times where if it's a pretty severe storm or a pretty significant system working its way through, it could take a little while. But usually what I notice is that the news stations here are really good at kind of identifying from this time to this time. So that's when you want to just kind of, again, be weather aware about what's going on. But technically, going back to, is North Dallas or North Texas in Tornado Alley? Technically, I think if we look at the map, we are, but it's not such that I would not deter you. This is coming from somebody that was really concerned about severe weather moving to the state. It's not the same as what you might find in Oklahoma, where it's more chronic. You might be under warning more frequently than you are here. Whereas, yes, severe weather comes, but it's typically more, at least what I've experienced, I can only tell you what I've experienced, been more of a watch. And again, I've met a number of people here who have never seen a tornado and been here all their lives, and they're in their 30s. So just something to note. Don't let it dissuade you from moving to the area, but just you should know kind of when peak seasons are, just so that way you can be prepared. when it comes to severe weather, what we're mostly concerned about is the wind. It's the wind really that's doing the majority of the damage. And so I've seen situations where, maybe one of those like big trampolines for your kiddos get picked up and lifted and put somewhere else. So if it's not anchored to the ground, that's a concern. The other thing that we're concerned about in severe weather is typically hail. And so hail can do some pretty significant damage to a car. And so usually when a severe storm is coming through, we want to make sure that the cars are in the garage, and making sure that we keep them from any type of hail damage. And hail damage, it could be like pea-sized hail. Usually they'll be able to tell you too, the weather system or the news stations will tell you, like, people, because what's so great is that people will tell you, here's what just came through, so that the next city over, whatever it's headed their direction, they can really kind of know what to anticipate. So they'll usually say, oh, it's pea-sized hail, or it's quarter-sized hail, or it's golf ball-sized hail. So the bigger the hail, the more damage. And so ideal state is you want to make sure that your vehicles or anything that you love and care about, yourself, children, your family, are inside the house, because that hail could be pretty damaging. And so that's something that you want to just be mindful of. Again, it's not about the property being lifted off the ground and taken somewhere else. It's really the wind and it's the hail that we're mostly concerned about. So really making sure that that patio furniture is tied down, that trampoline is tied down, cars are inside, so all of your belongings are inside the home, so that way you can protect them as best as possible. So again, it's not so much the significant damage just from the tornado itself or tornado threats and things like that. It's the wind. And like going back to those straight line winds, those were pretty intense. Like I said, our windows were like shaking. So things like that, you want to just make sure that you have things tied down and make sure you do what you need to make sure that anything that could physically be, that's lighter, that could physically be moved, you want to make sure that those things are tied down, just so that way you don't experience any damage, or at least amount of damage as possible. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about when it comes to storms, severe weather, things like that, the other thing that people get real concerned about is thunderstorms. And so if you're in an area that you're not used to having, thunderstorms routinely, sometimes it can be a little scary. Like the thunderstorms here, again, storms move really quickly. So it's not like you're spending hours and hours wondering, when is the storm going to pass? They do tend to go, for the most part. There have been a couple that have lingered a little while, but for the most part, what I've experienced is usually those storms are in and out. So when I mean in and out, I'm saying like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and they're pretty much out of here. So they move pretty quickly, but it can be a little scary if you're not used to the thunder and the lightning and things like that. And so there is the biggest concern around that is lightning strikes, right? So people are, that's a real threat. There have been homes that have been struck by lightning and have burned. And so what you want to do in those situations, there are companies that will come and do like lightning rods where they will put a lightning rod on your house. So in the event that your house is struck by lightning, that lightning hits the rod and then it goes straight down into the ground, and it doesn't create a potential fire situation in your home. They can be pretty, I'm not gonna lie, they can be pretty pricey. And so most folks don't have those systems just because it is so, it's not a frequent occurrence. Like I said, it does happen. I have driven by and seen houses that have been fire started because of a lightning strike. It's not common. So I think that's why it's not common, and it's costly to have a lightning rod system put in your house. And so I think that's why you don't see a lot of folks that have those systems, because it's just pretty rare. But the main thing is just to kind of, when those severe storms come through, is just to take note of your house. So if it's not a situation where you are needing to take shelter, just paying close attention to what's going on within your property, because chances are great if your house has been struck and your home, chances are great you're going to know it. You're going to hear some things happening. So it's not going to be a surprise to you. So that's why it's also very important to make sure that you have like all the necessary things in terms of fire extinguisher, know how to quickly get to your phone. So if you do need to call fire department, anything like that, that they're at the ready, that kind of thing. But it is a threat, but it's so, what I would say, it's not so common that everyone in the area has a lightning rod. Like if you saw a lightning rod system in your house, if you saw that, then I think there would be more cause for concern. But for the most part, it hasn't been such an issue where that's a common practice here. Just something to be aware of is the primary thing there. I'll include just a few examples of some companies that do that work in case you're interested in that. For me, it hasn't been such an issue that I've been concerned to that degree that I'm anticipating putting a lightning rod system in the house. But just in case that's something that's really of a concern to you, I'll share some links in the description, so that way you can go to that and just check out those resources and see if you're moving to the area, if that might be something you might want to check into. So I think that does it for the weather review of the North Dallas area. So hopefully it's been helpful to you, at least to give you a sense of, like I said, as we're heading into the springtime, what to kind of prepare for if this is your first spring here in North Dallas, or if you're anticipating moving during the spring months, just kind of what to prepare for. So the main thing is here, you do need to stay weather aware. I have been caught out in the rain numerous times just because I forgot that it's not Southern California, and I need to make sure I know what the full day looks like, not just the morning. So just make sure that you're staying up to date with what's happening with the weather. Like I said, if tornadoes is a concern, things like that, don't let that dissuade you. That was a chief concern, but since we've been here, I again have not ever been in a situation, not to say it couldn't happen, but it wasn't enough to dissuade me from moving to the area. The benefits of living here in the North Dallas area far outweigh the disadvantages. And there's always going to be something. In Southern California, with earthquakes, it was mudslides, it was fires. That was always the case. Whereas here, we've got a few months of severe weather, but nothing too crazy. Hopefully that information has been helpful to you as you're thinking about moving to the area. Maybe you already live here and you're planning on purchasing, or are just curious about what to anticipate for the spring and fall months. So that'll give you a little bit of an insight. And so please reach out. I'd love to hear, one, where you're watching this video from. Love to connect with you. So please feel free to comment if there's any other information that you'd like me to share around living in the North Texas area. I'm definitely happy to do that. So leave me a comment down below and let me know what else information I can share with you as you're trying to make your decision to move into the area. And if I can be of service to you for buying or selling a property here in the North Dallas area, happy to do so. So with that, I think that's it for this video, and we'll see you in the next one.